After the Second World War, Germany became a beacon of hope for immigrants, offering sanctuary and opportunities. However, a dramatic shift is underway. The rise of the far-right Alternative for Germany AfD party is challenging the nation's approach to immigration. With promises of mass deportations and a crackdown on immigration policies, the political landscape is rapidly changing. In this video, we delve into the motivations behind this radical shift, exploring how it could impact the millions of immigrants who now call Germany home and what this means for the country's future. Stay tuned as we uncover the story shaking Germany to its core. The evolution of German migration, a historical context. Migration has always been a defining element of Germany's history, but the scale and impact of migration have shifted dramatically in recent decades. From post-war rebuilding to modern-day challenges, migration policies have shaped Germany's economic landscape and social fabric in profound ways. The story of immigration in Germany is not just about people moving from one place to another. It's also about the evolution of a nation grappling with its identity, its history, and its place in a rapidly changing world. Post-World War II, migration and the economic miracle. The landscape of German migration dramatically changed after the Second World War. The devastation caused by the war left millions of Germans displaced, seeking refuge in their own country or in neighboring nations. As these displaced citizens returned home, they were joined by refugees from Eastern Europe, particularly ethnic Germans, who had been displaced during border shifts. These migrants arrived in a broken Germany, a country struggling to rebuild its cities, industries, and economy. Yet, in the midst of this adversity, Germany was on the cusp of one of the most remarkable economic turnarounds in modern history. The Wirtschaftswunder, or economic miracle, of the 1950s marked the beginning of Germany's transformation into an industrial powerhouse. This era of rapid industrialization created a labor shortage, and in turn, Germany sought workers from abroad to fuel its economic growth. Countries like Italy and Turkey sent thousands of workers to help fill the growing demand for labor in the factories and on the construction sites. At the time, the economic success of West Germany was so remarkable that it quickly became a destination for workers not only from Europe, but also from as far afield as Mexico. This influx of labor helped stabilize and expand Germany's economy, but it also set the stage for deeper questions about integration, identity, and the role of foreign workers in German society. During the decades that followed, Germany's immigration policies remained relatively lax, allowing millions of migrants from various countries to settle in the nation. These migrants, often coming from Turkey, Italy, Greece, and later the Middle East and Eastern Europe, contributed significantly to Germany's economic growth and cultural diversity. Despite this, the issue of integration remained contentious, and while many migrants settled and integrated into German society, tensions began to rise as the country grappled with how to accommodate an increasingly diverse population. The 2015 migration crisis, a turning point. Everything changed in 2015. That year, as conflicts raged across the Middle East, Germany found itself at the heart of a migration crisis that would alter its immigration policies and societal fabric. More than 1 million refugees, many of them from war-torn Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq, arrived in Germany in what was hailed by some as an act of compassion and humanitarianism, but by others as a perilous move that would test the limits of Germany's resources and social tolerance. Angela Merkel, the Chancellor at the time, took a bold stance and opened Germany's borders to these refugees, a move that was lauded by human rights advocates, but vehemently opposed by many of her citizens and political opponents. For many Germans, the sight of so many refugees arriving in their country was a symbol of both hope and fear. Hope for those fleeing war and persecution, but fear of the strains that such a large influx of people would place on Germany's infrastructure, economy, and social cohesion. The political fallout from Merkel's decision was swift and significant. Her party, the Christian Democratic Union, CDU, faced growing opposition from right-wing and far-right groups who argued that Germany was being overwhelmed by migrants. This opposition came to a head with the rise of the Alternative for Germany, AfD, a far-right political party that would soon make immigration its central focus. The birth of the AfD, A response to the migration crisis. The AfD was not born out of a singular response to the 2015 refugee crisis, but rather out of a broader discontent with the economic and political direction of Germany. Founded in 2013 by a group of economists and political figures, the AfD initially focused on opposing the European Union's economic policies, particularly the Eurozone crisis, and Germany's involvement in bailing out struggling European nations. However, by 2015, the party's focus began to shift dramatically towards immigration. The 2015 migration crisis provided the AfD with a platform to rally against Merkel's open-door policy. Their rhetoric quickly shifted to focus on what they perceived as the threat posed by mass immigration. The party capitalized on fears surrounding the refugee influx, framing it as an existential crisis for Germany's national identity. The AfD's anti-immigration stance resonated with many Germans who were concerned about the cultural, social, and economic impact of the new arrivals. Over the next few years, the AfD's popularity grew exponentially, culminating in the 2017 federal elections, where the party secured a significant number of seats in the Bundestag. By 2023, the AfD had become one of the largest political forces in Germany, with 79 seats in parliament and growing support from rural and working-class voters who felt left behind by globalization and mass immigration. The AfD's anti-immigration platform. The AfD's rise is closely linked to its aggressive anti-immigration rhetoric, which has dominated its platform since its inception. The party argues that Germany's immigration laws, which it views as too lenient, are undermining the country's national identity, straining public resources, and contributing to rising crime rates. The AfD's solution is simple: reform immigration policies to drastically reduce the number of migrants allowed to enter the country, and in some cases, deport those who have already arrived. One of the AfD's most controversial proposals is the so-called remigration policy, which calls for the deportation of over 1 million immigrants from Germany in the coming years. This would include undocumented immigrants, individuals who have been denied asylum, and even those who have committed crimes, regardless of their severity. The AfD has been vocal about their plans to expedite deportations by bypassing legal obstacles and increasing detention for those awaiting deportation. The party also advocates for a rigorous screening process for potential migrants, particularly those from countries with high crime rates or histories of violence. By implementing stricter background checks, the AfD hopes to prevent individuals they deem as security risks from entering the country. These proposals have caused alarm both within Germany and internationally. Critics argue that the AfD's stance on immigration is both impractical and discriminatory, while supporters contend that these policies are necessary to preserve Germany's social fabric and protect its resources. The current state of German immigration laws. Germany's immigration laws are governed by two main pieces of legislation: the Residence Act, Aufenthaltsgesetz, and the Asylum Procedure Act, Asylverfahrensgesetz. The Residence Act governs the entry, residence, and employment of foreigners in Germany, while the Asylum Procedure Act deals with the process by which asylum seekers are granted protection in the country. Both laws have evolved over time to accommodate the changing needs of the country, but the AfD has consistently criticized them for being too lenient. According to the AfD, the current laws allow for too many migrants to enter the country, putting undue strain on Germany's public services, welfare system, and housing market. The party argues that these laws not only allow too many migrants to settle in Germany, but also fail to properly integrate them into German society. The AfD's solution is a complete overhaul of the immigration system, with stricter rules on who can enter, live, and work in Germany. The AfD's most radical proposal is to deport migrants who have overstayed their visas, those who have committed crimes, or those who have been denied asylum. In addition to this, the party wants to introduce new immigration procedures that would make it more difficult for migrants to enter the country in the first place. These measures would include more stringent background checks, country ranking systems, and a ban on migrants from countries with high crime rates or histories of violence. Feasibility of the AfD's immigration plans. While the AfD's immigration policies have gained considerable traction among its supporters, there is significant debate about whether these plans are feasible. The deportation of over 1 million people is an enormous logistical challenge, and many argue that such a process would place immense strain on Germany's legal and administrative systems. Furthermore, there are questions about the human rights implications of mass deportations, particularly when it comes to individuals who have lived in Germany for years or have families in the country. Moreover, the economic consequences of tightening immigration laws could be significant. Germany's economy is heavily reliant on migrant labor, particularly in industries like construction, agriculture, and manufacturing. If the AfD's policies were implemented, they could disrupt these sectors, leading to labor shortages and potentially harming the economy. In addition to this, there is the question of public opinion. While the AfD has seen significant growth in recent years, its proposals remain highly controversial, and many Germans are concerned about the implications of such sweeping changes to immigration policy. Proponents of immigration argue that migrants contribute significantly to Germany's economy and culture, and they warn that the country risks becoming more isolated and less diverse if the AfD's vision becomes reality. The impact of the AfD's remigration policy on Germany's economy and society. The proposal put forward by the Alternative for Germany, AfD party, to mass deport immigrants has ignited widespread debates within Germany, spanning both economic and social implications. While the AfD has gained significant political traction by advocating for tougher immigration policies, including their controversial remigration strategy, their proposed measures face considerable opposition from various sectors of German society. These include concerns from both political leaders and humanitarian organizations, not to mention the immense logistical, legal, and ethical hurdles that the AfD must overcome. Economic effects of mass deportation. One of the central arguments presented by the AfD in support of their remigration policy is the assertion that deporting immigrants will alleviate pressure on Germany's social services, reduce crime, and allow for more resources to be allocated to German citizens. However, this claim is met with skepticism from experts, who warn that the economic fallout from such a drastic policy could be far-reaching. The role of immigrants in the German economy. Immigrants, both legal and illegal, have contributed significantly to the German economy. Historically, migrant workers have been central to the country's labor force, particularly in sectors like construction, manufacturing, healthcare, and service industries. Germany's post-World War II economic recovery, known as the Wirtschaftswunder, economic miracle, relied heavily on the influx of workers from countries like Turkey, Italy, and Greece, and in more recent decades, the influx of migrants from Eastern Europe and the Middle East has continued to bolster the labor market. Disruptions to the labor market. The AfD's proposal to deport 1 million people, primarily targeting undocumented migrants and those with criminal records, raises concerns about the potential disruption this could cause to Germany's economy. Many sectors that are already experiencing labor shortages, such as healthcare, agriculture, and transportation, would face additional strain if large numbers of workers were suddenly removed from the workforce. The loss of such a significant portion of the labor force could lead to a slowdown in production, increased labor costs, and even a rise in inflation, as businesses would be forced to compete for fewer workers. Furthermore, the AfD's claim that the removal of immigrants will have no significant economic impact is contradicted by a growing body of research. A study by the German Institute for Economic Research, DIW, indicates that immigrants, especially those who have integrated into the workforce, tend to contribute more in taxes and social security than they take in benefits. Therefore, a mass deportation policy could result in the loss of this financial contribution, ultimately costing Germany billions in lost revenue. Logistical challenges. Executing a mass deportation plan of the scale proposed by the AfD would present a logistical nightmare. Deporting 1 million people within a short period of time would require an unprecedented mobilization of resources and personnel. The AfD's proposal suggests that the government will utilize existing detention centers for individuals awaiting deportation, yet the practicalities of such a plan raise serious concerns about feasibility. Resource requirements for deportation. The number of people to be deported, estimated at over 1 million, would necessitate an expansion of Germany's current infrastructure. This includes not only an increase in the number of detention centres, but also a dramatic boost in personnel, security guards, legal representatives, translators, and officials tasked with processing individuals for deportation. Each deportation case would need to be handled individually, with the government ensuring that deportees are not unfairly treated or subject to inhumane conditions. The cost of maintaining and staffing these facilities, combined with the transportation costs of sending individuals back to their countries of origin, would amount to billions of euros. Moreover, the AfD's plan also calls for a more expedited deportation process, bypassing laws that slow down deportations and ensuring that deportees do not abscond. The impact on public services and social welfare. The logistical burden does not stop at deportation itself. The AfD's proposal would likely lead to increased demands on public services as authorities work to enforce stricter immigration controls. Social welfare programs, such as unemployment benefits, housing support and healthcare, could face an increased burden as authorities attempt to process and monitor the deportation process. Legal hurdles, EU law and international commitments. Germany's immigration policy is shaped not only by domestic laws, but also by its obligations as part of the European Union and international treaties. The European Union has established comprehensive regulations governing asylum and refugee protection, including the Dublin Regulation, which stipulates that asylum seekers must apply for asylum in the first EU country they enter. For Germany to expel a large number of immigrants, it would have to navigate a complicated web of EU law, international treaties, and human rights obligations. The Dublin Regulation and the role of EU law. The Dublin Regulation, which Germany is a signatory of, prevents the country from independently deporting asylum seekers to countries that are not responsible for their claims. This means that any mass deportation plan would have to take into account the intricate details of the Dublin system, potentially leading to delays, legal challenges, and even the reversal of deportation decisions if individuals have valid asylum claims in other EU countries. In addition to these EU constraints, Germany is also bound by international human rights conventions, including the European Convention on Human Rights, ECHR, which protects the right to family life and prohibits the collective expulsion of foreigners. These international agreements complicate the AfD's plans, as they would likely face significant legal challenges, both from within Germany and from the broader international community, should they proceed with their mass deportation agenda. Ethical and moral hurdles. Germany has long been viewed as a leader in human rights, particularly with regard to its treatment of immigrants and refugees. The country's post-World War II history, which includes the acceptance of millions of refugees and the rehabilitation of displaced persons, has contributed to its reputation as a compassionate and just society. The AfD's proposed remigration policy, which includes the deportation of large numbers of immigrants, raises serious ethical concerns, particularly given the potential violation of Germany's human rights commitments. Humanitarian considerations and moral responsibility. The ethical dilemma posed by the AfD's mass deportation proposal is multifaceted. For one, it contradicts Germany's long-standing commitment to protecting refugees fleeing war, persecution, and human rights abuses. Many of the individuals affected by the AfD's policy are refugees who fled conflict zones in the Middle East, Africa, and South Asia, seeking safety and stability in Germany. Deporting these individuals could result in their return to dangerous environments where they may face persecution, violence, or even death. Moreover, the mass deportation plan could cause significant harm to families, particularly those who have lived in Germany for years, integrated into society, and established careers or businesses. Forcing them to leave could cause psychological distress, disrupt their livelihoods, and lead to the separation of families. These humanitarian concerns are likely to generate fierce opposition from human rights groups, social workers, and members of the public who view the AfD's policies as a violation of Germany's moral obligations. Political opposition, a divided Germany. The AfD's remigration policy has drawn sharp criticism from most of Germany's mainstream political parties, who view the proposal as both unfeasible and morally reprehensible. Both the Christian Democratic Union, CDU, and the Social Democratic Party, SPD, have raised concerns about the economic, social, and ethical implications of the AfD's plan. The CDU's response: border control over deportation. While the CDU acknowledges that immigration poses challenges for Germany, they have expressed strong opposition to the AfD's mass deportation plans. CDU leaders argue that stricter border control measures and improved integration policies would be more effective solutions than deporting large numbers of people. They have also warned that such a policy could lead to social unrest and division within German society, particularly if the deportations were carried out without adequate legal safeguards. The SPD's criticism: inhumane and archaic policies. The SPD has been even more vocal in its condemnation of the AfD's remigration policy, calling it inhumane and archaic. Party leaders argue that the AfD's proposal would not only violate Germany's moral standing, but also destabilize the economy and society. The SPD believes that immigrants have made significant contributions to the country, both economically and socially, and that Germany should focus on improving integration rather than pushing people out. Conclusion: a nation divided. The debate over the AfD's remigration policy reveals deep divisions within Germany about immigration, national identity, and the country's role in the global community. While the AfD's growing political support, particularly in regions like Thuringia and Saxony, suggests that a significant portion of the population backs their hardline stance on immigration, the practical and ethical challenges of implementing such policies remain significant. Germany's future on this issue is uncertain, but it is clear that any move toward mass deportation will have profound implications for the country's economy, its legal system, and its moral standing on the global stage. In the end, it may be a policy that proves more divisive than effective, leaving Germany to grapple with the complex realities of immigration in an increasingly interconnected world.